Welcome. Hello. This is the Institute for Common Powers Education to Action podcast. I'm Dr. Terry Ann Scott, director of the Institute. It is today, December 1st, 2025. This marks the 70th anniversary of the day that Miss Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And we're going to talk all about that today and what it means. I am joined by my colleague, Dr. David Domke. Welcome, Dr. Domke. David, how are you doing?
I'm great, Dr. Scott. This is one of those days that when you think about it in the course of a year, that people like you and me, we circle on the calendar. We're like 70 years ago today. A, a, a person made a decision, and we want to dive into that decision.
Yep.
And we also want to wrap it into the much larger context in which that decision occurred.
Absolutely. I mean, we're sitting here in a historical moment and a political moment right now where Miss Rosa Parks' autobiography, where she talks about this moment that we're going to explore, has actually been banned in school districts across the country.
Man, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what we're
Wow.
dealing with. So we
Okay.
are here because we're committed to truth, and we're going to make sure that everybody who listens to this understands the truth and is able to take this and use it as inspiration for change.
Okay, for just fun's sake, I
Okay.
want to pepper you. I want to ask you a couple quick rapid fire questions. Okay,
All right. Let's go.
and just like you're gonna be like, what's he doing? But just go with it here. Okay, so
Yeah, I know.
so
I know you. I understand the rapid fire, and let's go. I'm ready.
okay, December 1st, 1955, 70 years ago. That was the first time that no one gave up their seat on a bus among black citizens, right?
So glad you said that because that is exactly what everybody assumes in this country. And if you were taught that was the first time when Miss Rosa Parks said, "No, I'm not giving up my seat," that was the first time a black person pushed against the boundaries of transportation segregation. You were taught that, and I'm sorry, and that's not correct. You know, often when we go on the learning tours, which we're going on one next week, we will actually be in Montgomery on December 5th, the day of the first mass meeting associated with the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yeah,
So when we
yeah.
go on this, I will give people a quiz, right? So I will say, tell me the who, the when, and the where. So for those of you watching, listen to this and answer these questions. Who, when, where? So on this particular day, there was a woman who was riding public transportation in a city, and she refused to be removed from that public transportation because she wasn't going to stand for it anymore. And so, because it did not adhere to the laws of segregation in the city, the conductor of that public transportation had her arrested, and her case eventually led to desegregation in that city. So, who was it? Where was it? And when was it? Dr. Domke, how do you think people typically answer that?
Well, I think that's a good. I'm glad you asked that, like, because frankly, most people who go on our learning tours with us don't have the answer to that. They
No.
don't. Okay, and there's no knowledge shaming there. There's no like,
Nope.
what the hell? What's the problem? Why don't you know that? The fact
Right.
is, it's just not. It's not walk around knowledge that most of us have. But
Mm-mm.
if you are an American who has like paid attention and thought about a lot of this and read the kind of books that you and I read all the time, then you might answer Rosa Parks, December something, 1955 in
Mm-hmm.
Montgomery, Alabama. That would be like the best guess we get from anybody.
Right. And sometimes they'll say Claudette Colvin because they
Right.
know that there was this 15-year-old who was arrested before Rosa Parks in 1955. But the answer, and we hear gasps from the crowd when we give it, is actually Elizabeth Jennings in New York City, not in the South, and the year 1854. 101
Hmm.
years before Miss Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. She was not the first. That does not take away in any way from the courage and the monumental nature of what she did. But what it tells us is that people had been pushing for transportation equality in this country since the inception of segregation on transportation. Just alone in Birmingham, Alabama in the 1890s, there were nearly 100 incidents of Black people being arrested or being violently hurt because they were pushing against the boundaries of segregation on transportation. That, I'm going to say that again, nearly 100 incidents just in a 10-year period from the 1890s in Birmingham, Alabama alone. There were countless times when people did this. But when Miss Rosa Parks did it on the day that she did it, and given the person she was, it would set in motion a particular set of events that would escalate a civil rights movement.
All right, next rapid fire question.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Terry Ann Scott. Uh, this was just a situation where Rosa Parks was tired that day, right? And she didn't want
Right.
to stand up.
And that she was extremely elderly too. That's what they
Yeah, she
say,
was
right?
old. Was she not?
Yeah,
She was ancient. She was so old, Terry. How
she
old was
was
she?
ancient. She was much younger than you and I think that we're pretty young. It's
Yeah,
amazing to think
totally
about.
young. Well, how old was she? Come on.
She was 42 years old.
42. 42.
I mean,
She's like a sibling to us, right?
serious, a younger sibling,
Yes.
42 years old, like the baby of the family. It's shocking, but they have cast her to be this very elderly, exhausted woman. She was not tired. She was not new to activism at all, and she was not old. 42-year-old woman. And when she sat down and people asked her, "Why didn't you get up?" She said, "I thought about Emmett Till, and I couldn't go back." That is
Yeah.
really monumental because what it tells us is when the Montgomery bus boycott began, this was not the first incident in this modern civil rights movement. We can date it back to World War II. You and I talk about that on our learning tours, or 1954. 1954. What happened on May 17th, 1954?
The Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision outlawing segregation in public schools.
Right. And 4 days after that decision, on
Right.
May 21st, 1954, a year and a half before Miss Rosa Parks didn't give up her seat today on December 1st, Joanne Robinson, who was a professor at Alabama State University, sent a letter to the mayor of Montgomery and said to him, she was inspired by the Brown ruling, right? And
Right.
says to him, "You had better do something about segregation on these buses, or we are going to plan a boycott." This was something set in motion. So what does this tell us about Miss Rosa Parks? She is coming on the edge of, in the aftermath of this 1954 Brown versus Board of Education ruling and the murder of Emmett Till that had happened just a few months before she refused to give up her seat. And there was a very famous doctor, and David, you were in the town that he's from. Do you want to tell us some about that doctor and why he was in Montgomery a few days before she didn't give up her seat?
Sure. This gentleman's name is Dr. T.R.M. Howard, Theodore Roosevelt Mason Howard. And he lived, or for a good chunk of his life, in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. And Mound Bayou, and Dr. Scott, you're an expert on this stuff, but Mound Bayou was founded as an all-black town right after the Civil War, after newly enslaved people were freed, right? I mean, enslaved people were newly freed. And he lived there, and these folks protected themselves with guns and with weapons and with community strength. And he was there, and there were people. During the Emmett Till trial, the trial of the people who killed him, his mother, Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till Mobley, came and stayed at Dr. Howard's house.
Yeah.
And Dr. Howard went around the country then talking to people, inspiring them and saying, "Emmett Till, look what happened to Emmett Till. We got to fight." And he was in Montgomery, right? He was in Montgomery just before Rosa Parks didn't get up.
That's right. He had gone to Montgomery because the two men were found innocent of murder. They then sell their story to Look magazine for like $4,000 and admitted to murdering Emmett Till. They were never brought up on charges of kidnapping. So he was going around the country with Mamie Till Mobley protesting this injustice and asking people to rally and do something about it. And so he had gone to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s church, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, which is blocks from where Miss Rosa Parks got on the bus. And she was in the sanctuary listening to him speak 4 days before she refused to give up her seat. That in part served as motivation for her. So did the fact that that summer she had been at the Highlander Folk School. Now, I know, David, I have been there, but you've been there long before I went there and have been going there for many years. Can you tell us what she may have encountered, Miss Rosa Parks, at the Highlander Folk School?
The Highlander Folk School was founded in the 1930s in the hills of Tennessee as a place for people that were liberal fighters for democracy. Started out really trying to organize unions, and then it grew out of union organizing into much larger social justice and racial justice and civil rights work. And virtually every major civil rights figure that we know about in this country spent time at the Highlander Folk School, just in community, in learning, in learning strategies, and figuring out ways to do their work. And Miss Rosa Parks had been there in the summer of 1955, just before. And she said, "I got to come back. I'm going to do something. It's my time. It's my turn, and I need to do something."
Right. Okay. So I want to review before we go on because there's so much more about her and this particular moment and what it means, right? So we have today, December 1st, 1954, 70 years ago when Miss Rosa Parks refused to give up her
55.
seat.
55.
55, 1955. Woo, 1955. She does this 70 years ago today. This
Right.
she was a young woman, 42 years old. She had been involved in activism, and we'll get more to that, but she had gone to the Highlander Folk School. She was inspired by the murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till. There was in the city brewing this like kind of threat. I don't even want to use threat, but almost promise that there's going to be a bus boycott because leaders in the city have been inspired by the Brown decision the year before in 1954. And you have all this accumulating in one particular moment, in addition to the fact that Miss Rosa Parks had been a part of the NAACP in Montgomery for
Yeah.
years previous to that, right? For
Yep.
years. And what
Yep.
else? What else about her? We know that she had been part of the Reese Taylor case. It was a case of a young black woman who had been raped by 6 or 7 white men in broad daylight, and nothing was done to them. She goes to Abbeville, Alabama, to go and talk to Miss Reese Taylor and engages in a letter writing campaign to the governor and newspapers that would eventually lead to a grand jury being formed against those men. They would not be indicted, but she had put herself out there 10 years before. So we have all of this accumulating. Anything else we need to add about Miss Rosa Parks before we get to this singular moment?
Well, I don't think about Miss Parks. I would say that you've referenced Miss Joanne Robinson, Professor Robinson of Alabama State
Yes.
University. I'm going to make a quick aside here for a second. Mackenzie Scott, who
Mhm.
used to be married to Jeff Bezos and has all of
Yeah.
this wealth from Amazon. Mackenzie Scott just made a $38 million gift to Alabama State University.
Wow, I
Um,
forgot about that.
is
Yeah.
That's the largest gift in the history of that university, and she has intentionally been gifting dollars recently to historical black colleges and universities. So
Yeah.
right now, literally, I think this was done about a month ago by
Yeah, it
Mackenzie
was.
Scott. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so this moment cascades on. It's 70 years ago, a professor from there, Joanne Robinson, and what was called the Women's Political Council, the WPC in Montgomery,
Yeah.
mobilizes and is ready to go. And then Rosa Parks says, I'm not getting up. She gets arrested. She's got this long-standing feud with this bus driver that they don't get along, and
Blake.
he leads to the
Yep.
arrest of her, right? And so she gets arrested. And here's where I want to now pivot us, Terry, because I want to get into the strategy, and then I want to get into
Yeah.
what it means for us today. I want to get
Okay.
into for us at Common Power today. So let's go into the strategy now. So she gets arrested, and boom, it's like all of this stuff moves, not because it's like a big bang, but because they're ready. They're
Yes.
ready.
Right. It's one of those things where it is a planned act of what is it? Of activism, of pushing for change, and also this kind of impromptu moment. And they
Yeah.
coexist, right? Because she doesn't get on the bus necessarily that day saying, I'm going to do this. As a matter of fact, she had had issues with that same bus driver, Blake, in the past. And she said she tried to avoid the buses
Yeah.
that he was driving. But she happened to get on that one that day. They go a couple of blocks. White man comes on. She tells her that he tells her she needs to get up out of, because she's sitting in the quote unquote colored section, right? People
Right.
don't
Right.
realize that. She's sitting in the section that is relegated to black people in the back. But when the white section fills up, the rule was that black people had to get up from their seats, even in the black section, and give them to white people. She refused to do that. And that's when she is arrested. And the people who come to her aid when she's arrested are Edie Dixon, who was the head of the NAACP at the time, as well as, what was it? Burr was his first name, David. I forget. It was Virginia and
Oh,
her husband.
Virginia Durr.
Uh-huh, Durr
Ah.
and Mr. Durr. He was a white attorney, and they were two of the few white members of the NAACP in Montgomery. And then also Fred Gray, who was a 25-year-old lawyer at the time, who was from Alabama, went to school out of state because of segregation in the state, came back to Alabama and promised to, quote, desegregate everything segregated. So she had her legal counsel, right, when we talk about strategy. But there were on the ground then, you have Professor Joanne Robinson at Alabama State University, just gifted this enormous gift from Mackenzie Scott, who is going into her office. And what does she start to do? Can you tell us what
Yeah.
she does?
Well, she goes in there and she's like, I'm going to make some copies. And she calls up a couple of her students. It's late at night and
Hmm.
says, I'm going to make a whole bunch of copies. They type up something and they put it on what's called like the mimeograph machine, okay, where you would like roll it. You would turn it and turn it and turn it. And they start making all these copies. And so she and the students get all these copies. And then uh, they take it over to the paper cutter. Remember the paper cutters? Okay,
Yes.
right? Because they were making three copies
Hmm.
per page, and they cut it up. They
Thousands,
sliced
tens of
them,
thousands. Yes.
right? They sliced them, and so now they've got like just thousands upon thousands of copies, and they're ready to basically do a social media campaign that we would today. You'd be doing this all on social media, right?
Hmm.
But then it's actually they take all those copies and they deliver them around town. This is on a Friday. They deliver them
Yeah.
around town on Saturday and Sunday, calling for the boycott to happen on, no, I'm sorry, calling for there to be a mass meeting and a boycott, right? Or you know
Yeah.
exactly what is it calling for?
Yeah, they're calling for a boycott at first. And the newspaper inadvertently, not inadvertently, but a newspaper picks it up and they publish it, the local newspaper. And they
Yeah,
publish it
yeah.
thinking we're doing this breaking news. But you know what I love about that part? Anybody who had not gotten a hold of that copy or heard about it, then heard about it from the newspaper. So thank you so much for for spreading the word newspaper. So they call for a 1 day boycott on Monday. And you can find that letter that she wrote online because she says this is not the first time that somebody has been arrested. And she references Claudette Colvin, the 15-year-old. There have
Yeah,
been several women that year arrested in Montgomery. Their names actually would be part of the lawsuit, right? And they said, she
yeah.
said, do not ride the bus. You can afford to stay out of town 1 day. If you need to walk, walk. You can afford to not go to work or to school 1 day. That's what she says in this flyer. And we're calling for a 1 day boycott. And then Monday morning, Joanne Robinson, Professor Robinson, talks about how she goes to her window and she kind of pensively looks out, pulls the curtain to the side. I can just to see it, right? She looks outside nervously to say, okay, are people going to be on the bus? Because remember, the majority of people who rode the bus were Black people, and the
Yeah.
majority of them were Black women riding the bus to their work as domestics, and nobody's on the bus. Bus after bus rolls. It gives me chills. Bus after bus rolls
It
by.
would be it's like amazing. It's like it's hard to really grasp that moment of sheer terror and
Yes.
hope all together.
Mhm.
Sheer terror and hope, right? And there the people are not riding the bus. Like
Mhm.
unbelievable. They did it. They do it.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
do it. And Miss Rosa Parks really at this point is just a player in
Yeah.
the drama at this time. And the reason she's just a player is because she becomes a symbol. And that's what's made her such a big
Right.
deal in our country. She becomes a symbol. She was an activist, but she was also this kind of like strong happily married
Yeah.
woman. And she was a strong Christian woman. And so
Yes.
all of these dimensions made her a perfect symbol for the movement to rally behind. And we can't feel bad about that. The fact is that the movement strategically said, this is our person. We are going to go with this person. She did it. We're ready to go. And so they decide that night they're going to call a mass meeting and they're scratching their head. They're like, who's going to lead this thing? We need
Right.
someone to lead us.
But before we get to who leads it, I want to go back to the point that you made that she becomes their person because that still tells us a lot about the way that race and racism functions in this country. Her character could not be easily impugned.
Right.
They understood that if she had any kind of transgressions, any that had nothing to do with the fact that she should have been able to ride on that bus with dignity, then her character would have been impugned in the public and it would have made the case fall apart. It is why Claudette Colvin, the 15-year-old who had been arrested before her, was not chosen as the face of this boycott because it was said she was from a working class family. Uh, it was said that she was pregnant by a married man. None of that has anything to do with the fact that she should have been able to ride a bus without being arrested. But the leaders of the movement felt that she would have been too easily dismissed because she wasn't from a more upwardly mobile class, or that she would have been completely, her character assassinated. It's the same thing that we see, and we talk about this on the trip with Trayvon Martin. When Trayvon Martin was murdered by George Zimmerman, the conversation was not about the fact that Zimmerman chased a child who was going back to his home. It wasn't for some people. For many people, it was. That's why the Black Lives Matter movement started. But what the press picked up on often was that this is a kid who had smoked weed in his past. And so
Mm.
somehow that was a justification for what for what George Zimmerman did to him. And so they knew that the way that racism functions in this country, that they had to have somebody whose character could not be impugned. And that is why Rosa Parks was the perfect face of this movement.
So just because I want to get us to for us today, because I asked
Yeah.
we talked about doing this podcast both to celebrate Miss Parks and the bus boycott, but also to bring it home to us today.
Right.
So the kind of highlights from this point forward is that there's a mass meeting on that Monday night. December 1st back in 1955 was a Thursday. December
Yeah.
5th was a Monday. Okay, so 70 years ago on December 1st is when Rosa Parks gets arrested. All right.
Yeah.
December 5th is when the bus boycott starts. That night, there's a mass meeting. Dr. King is recruited by
Yeah.
Miss Joanne Robinson.
26 years
Come and give a
old.
talk.
Yeah.
26, right? Yes.
Wow.
He's recruited. He comes and he gives this incredible speech, and you can listen to it online, and it's an amazing speech, and he's talking along, and he's talking about the importance of standing up for civil rights, and then all of a sudden he just it's like watching a great athlete suddenly take it to another level, right?
Yeah.
He takes it up another level, and it just becomes this place of incredible energy and support, and it's clear that something has happened, a thing has occurred. And so they decide that they're going to stay off the buses, right? They decide
They're
they're
going
going
to
to
stay
stay
off the
off the
buses.
buses,
Right.
right? They're going to stay off the buses, Black Americans in Montgomery. Now, let's realize at this point in time, this was a step away out of the system by the Black citizens of Montgomery. They weren't going at this time in 1955, going in and sitting in lunch counters, okay,
Right.
or marching. They were going to have to build to that. Okay.
Right. They had
And,
done some of that in the 40s under Core in Chicago, but it
okay.
wasn't a mass kind of sit-in movement like we would see, and a little bit of that in the late 1800s. But it wasn't this kind of toboggan, right, yet that had taken its own speed.
The
And so
toboggan,
you're
yeah.
not, so you're not in the middle of a sit-in movement yet. So, and what they are doing, and when you talk about strategy, they are engaging in an economic boycott. Let's be very clear.
Yeah.
Much like people are doing today of Home Depot and Target and those, they are trying to hurt the city and the bus company in the pockets. And that's what will create change. That's incredible strategy.
And so they start to walk, and they start
Yeah.
to share car rides. They
Yeah.
start to create a carpool system, and then the city does create laws that outlaw the carpools, and then the city says you can't have insurance if you're driving people in your car that aren't in your family. The city does everything it can to break the boycott, but they just get stronger. They just get stronger, and so they start on December 5th, 1955, and they go all the way more than a year. They go over a year.
How many
right?
days, David? How many days did they boycott?
382 days, Terry.
Yeah.
And common knowledge is 381, but that great lawyer, Fred Gray, is still going strong.
He's still alive. That's right.
With his children running the Gray law firm in Tuskegee.
All the Grays went to law school.
He says in his book, Bus Ride to Justice, that actually it was 382, not 381 days, because it was a leap year. All right.
Love that.
The thing that blows me away is it's over a year. It's over a year. Right.
Yeah.
And so eventually, like the bus boycott wins because of a court decision. All
Right.
right.
But I love the way that they strategized in over that year. So Dr. King calls his friend Reverend Jemerson, who was a pastor in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And what most people don't know is that in 1953, Black people in Baton Rouge, Louisiana staged their own bus boycott 2 full years before Montgomery's bus boycott. It
Yeah.
lasted 10 days. It did not completely turn over segregation in the city, but it led to what they referred to as a more humane system, where there were certain seats relegated for Black people, certain for white people, and other seats that were first come, first serve. And so he taught him how to do a ride share system that looks much like the ride share systems today, where people could call a church and say, I need a ride, and they would come and get them. And so people volunteered to drive people around. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is that there was some level of interracial cooperation that we
Hmm.
saw in this
Hmm.
particular time. There were some Black, some white folks who were driving people around, who were engaged in helping them. And then there were people, because I went to the archives at the Library of Congress and saw these letters. There were people from all over the country, from churches, from synagogues, from unions, from worker unions, sending money to the Montgomery Improvement Association that had been created for this boycott, sending money to help support this rideshare system. And the other thing I want to point out that we're talking about, what we haven't kind of said directly, is just how prominent Black women were in the organizing and execution of the Montgomery bus boycott. That's something that we don't hear. We hear that Dr. King started it. Dr. King is an incredible person, philosopher. He's like an angel in so many ways. He was brought into this. Professor Joanne Robinson, Rosa Parks, other with the Women's Political Council, they spearheaded this movement. And so we have to take a moment to say that these Black women were at the forefront of creating this Montgomery bus boycott.
Yep. And it is the case that on October 24th of this year, the state of Alabama put up a monument, a statue to honor Rosa Parks. It's on the state capitol grounds. It's the first statue honoring a woman or honoring anybody African American on the state capitol grounds. And they did it just like a month and a half ago, 6 weeks ago, because of the 70th anniversary this year.
Right.
That's good. That's great that they've done that. The reality is that we have to face these same kind of choices today. Like, how can we come back from our Highlander folk school experience and make a difference? All right. How can we do that today?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'd like to kind of close with, Terry, here. Is
Okay, let's do it.
I always love kind of just doing podcasts with you and doing our history jams. We're like jazz musicians who do history, okay? And,
True. Just riff off of it.
exactly. But I particularly asked if we could do it today on December 1st,
Yeah.
because we face a mission right now that is going to take us just about 1 year to do. It's the midterms mission for Common
Yes.
Power. All right.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we have the ability, it's actually in our sights, the goal here. They were trying to do something that was unimaginable, really.
Yeah.
Unimaginable. So
Yeah.
for us, it's imaginable. We want to win the U.S. House and win the U.S. Senate and take back democracy in this country.
We do. I want to pause on one thing. You said unimaginable, not just because the city had ordinances that maintained segregation, not just because the state of Alabama had laws that maintained segregation, but also because, and we often do not think about this, the federal government sanctioned and allowed for segregation in the South. This was not some level of Southern exceptionalism. There were cases, including the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson case, that sanctioned, allowed for, said it was constitutional to have segregation in the South. The fact that they pushed up against that, it seems like there was no chance that they could win. And they won. And so, to your point, what we're facing is not nearly as seemingly insurmountable as what they faced. And they did it.
We can make it. In fact, I would
Yeah.
suggest that today, December 1st, 2025, that actually the momentum is with those of us who care about democracy in this country now. That the Donald Trump and MAGA universe is imploding. All right. And people of goodwill are rising up, rising up. All right. The election showed us this. The fact is that people fighting for truth in education are showing us this. So many people that are standing up. We are starting today, December 1st, have basically 11 months, 11
Yeah.
months till the election of 2026, the
Yep.
midterms. And this is a little hokey, but it's intentional on our part. Just like those people sent $1 or $2 or $5 from northern cities, northern towns,
Yeah.
northern farms, right, to support the bus boycott in Montgomery. That's what we need right now. It is a
Yeah.
way in which everybody can contribute to this.
Right.
We at Common Power are going to make a month-long push here to get our money solidified and solid for our push for the midterms. We're
Right.
asking you right now to kind of reach in and stretch
Yes.
for us.
Because we go to those cities, we knock on doors, we take students from our Action Academy, which is a college internship, with us. We take our Institute Educator Ambassadors, which are our K through 12 educators from across the country, with us. Both of those groups of individuals do not typically have enough money to be able to
No.
go and knock on doors themselves. And so we are committed to making sure that they can engage in the saving of this democracy, in the creation of a just and inclusive democracy. So we pay for them. We pay for everything, for every teacher, for every college student. And so we know that there are people who are unable to go knock on doors, but you can contribute in different ways, just like people supported that boycott.
Yeah. And, I'm one of the folks who raise money at this organization. And it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, I feel a little, I don't know, uncomfortable
Yeah.
asking for funds. Because,
I always feel uncomfortable asking for funds.
I feel a little uncomfortable asking for funds because, heck,
Yeah.
we do, right?
Yeah.
But here's the truth. Here's the truth.
How
The
we do our
fact
work.
is, we can't do this without this. We can't.
No.
So our choice is not ask and not push and then not do,
Yeah.
or we are going to push and ask for everybody's support, ask you to join us, and then we get to do. All right, we get to do.
We don't have
And
any government grants. If we did have government grants, they would have cut us off
they'd be
already under
gone.
this
They'd be
administration. Gone.
right.
Yeah.
If we were a university right now, we'd be settling lawsuits with
Yeah.
the government because they're so afraid of the government and the money that we're taking, right? If we were a regular nonprofit, we'd be worried. We'd be worried about being targeted in some kind of way. But we're not. We're an organization that has 3 different levers: a C3, a C4, and a PAC. And all of those levers allow us to do everything from really basic nonpartisan educational teaching and learning to very, very political intentional elections.
Yeah.
work,
I'm
like
going
we're
to
doing in
challenge you on that
Tennessee right
too.
now.
Nonpartisan, seemingly benign, whatever. This lecture that we just gave, this conversation that we just gave, we wouldn't be able to give in school districts in this country, to be clear. Seemingly benign has become completely politicized because there is a push to change the narrative of American history and completely whitewash it. So even the work that we do in our C3 that is about education could
Yeah.
have been stopped right now in different parts of this country. And we are able to do that with people's support.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if you or I were still in the university setting and teach and doing this lecture, I believe that we would deliver it, but the whole time, you'd be waiting for that email or from that student that is going to say, you know what, I just recorded this and I'm going to bring now a massive tsunami of people that are going to come after you.
Right, because it would be considered under one of Trump's executive orders that he signed in, I think, April of this year, a divisive concept that we put forward, and thereby subject the school to the possibility of losing federal funds.
Yeah. So
It's
we don't do
crazy.
that at Common Power. That's why we don't. That's why we are 3 different arms: educational, political, and political coordination with campaigns, which is our PAC work. So
Yeah.
back to Rosa Parks then. It's 70 years ago today, Dr. Scott, and we're going to be, as you mentioned, in Montgomery on December
Wow.
5th with a group of folks from this Common Power community. We're going to be there, all right? And we're going to be there and we're going to say, you know what? if she can do it, we have to.
Yeah.
We have to. If they can do it, we have
We
to.
can do this, right? There's no excuse for us. They have shown us the way. I mean, one of the things we talk about at the Institute is movement learning, right? And that movement learning is not only about moving and going to the spaces where we are, but it's about learning from the movements of the past, strategy and inspiration. And so as challenging as things feel right now, we are not allowed to somehow retreat into that challenge and not do
No.
anything, because the movements of the past have created the kinds of freedoms and advances we have because they didn't do that. They kept going forward. And so we have to learn from those to understand that it doesn't take a day. I mean, they walked for 382 days, okay,
Yeah.
until they created change. 382 days. This, we have to be in this for the long term.
Yeah. 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 And it's just, it's so funny, like walking around with normal humans when I'm like, hey, today is like Rosa Parks's anniversary day. And they're like, okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
you understand, the world turned. And
Right.
she had to do what she did, but
Yeah.
also all of these other people had to do what they did. All
Yeah.
right.
And it
And
wasn't
that's
without.
common.
And they were, I mean, Dr. King's house was bombed. The churches were bombed. They were arrested. They continued to persevere despite these very real threats to their families and themselves. It's just, it's unbelievable. So the more we learn about it and the more we understand the perilous nature of what they got involved in, the less of an excuse we have today to be
Yeah.
inactive. We must turn, as we say in the Institute for Common Power, this education that we've given them today into action.
We have to take action, folks. We have to. And for us at Common Power, that's time and treasure. Okay? It's time devoted to doing work, to mobilizing your community, to making a
Hmm.
difference. And it's treasure to supporting people to do this work. It's those two things. And
Yeah.
so that's where I end in this podcast is like, we are
Yeah.
asking. And the fact is that we're asking in a sort of strength and a determination, and we need to do this. We need to do this together.
Yeah, we do. All right, Dr. David Domke, this was great. 70 years.
Thanks,
I'll
Dr.
see you
Scott. 70 years. Yeah.
70 years. I'll see you in Atlanta and then Montgomery in just a few days for a learning
Yep.
tour.
Thank you all. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.